thank you for coming to this. This is a major component in the process to identify the next president of Concordia University, St. Paul. And this is the first time this process has been used, not only on this campus, but on any campus within the Concordia University system. So we're breaking ground here with the process. And we started the process this fall, and we had 40 nominations, and we are at a point where we have, the Board of Regents has invited 3 candidates to campus to visit, to engage in more in-depth discussion of the issues. In the process, the new process, the 17 members of the Board of Regents are charged with the responsibility to elect the next president. And while only board members will be voting, and they're the only ones that can cast a vote, these campus visits, as I said, are an important part because the board wants to get to know the candidates, and we want the candidates to get to know Concordia St. Paul. So it provides an opportunity to interact with the candidates and for the board to get valuable input. And so we ask for your input and ask for your questions at the end here. Board or search committee members have been attending each component of the campus visit today, and they will tomorrow, and that will all filter to the board on April 4th when the election comes. And as I said, the visit also provides the candidates an opportunity to learn more about Concordia. Today we welcome the Reverend Dr. David Kluth and his wife Carol back to campus and back to Minnesota. David and Carol met at Concordia as students, and I heard how they met today in freshman religion class and trading maps and all kinds of things, and so they've got a long history. David and Carol were also, David was a pastor at St. Paul in Prior Lake, and so they are familiar with Minnesota weather. This didn't shock them to come from 80 degrees, 70 degrees? It's 70 today. 70 today in Austin here. They knew what they're getting into. Dr. Kluth is currently serving as the Vice President for University Services at Concordia University, Texas, in Austin, Texas. And the Board of Regents has recognized his broad administrative and management experience in visionary leadership and invited him to campus today as a candidate to be our next president. He's meeting today and tomorrow with students, faculty, staff, and Board of Regents members, and we've asked him to spend a few minutes today sharing his vision with us. At the conclusion of his remarks today, we'll have time for some questions. So join me in welcoming Dr. Kluth.
Thank you, everyone. It is a pleasure for Carol and I to be here today and tomorrow. My wife is sitting out here. Just raise your hand. That's my wife, Carol. It's a privilege to be here. I know that it is a long, hard winter for you guys this year. I knew it was a long, hard winter largely because we had snow in Texas. And whenever we get snow, it's got to be bad up here. Last month, we had a snowstorm, and we don't get snow very often. It happens about maybe every 4 or 5 years. But this was our snowstorm in February. And it was just less than an inch of snow. And it shut us down for 24 hours. This is the extent, the drifts and all. And I'm the one who has to make the decision on closing campus. And it is, for a person that's been born up north, this is a tough one to call because I don't really see any reason for anybody why they can't get there. So we shut down campus, everybody was happy, gave them a 3-day weekend. The following Wednesday, we had the threat of ice. the threat of ice, and I didn't shut it down. And people were emailing me. They were so upset about the whole thing because they were so worried about winter weather. So this is sort of our winter weather, and I know you've had a long winter, and I trust spring will be coming soon, and that'll be warm soon. I am honestly humbled to be a part of this process. I shared that with the search committee last month. Back in 69, 70, and 71, when I attended Concordia St. Paul, I could have never imagined in my wildest dreams that someday I might be standing here and being considered for president of the institution. It just would have never crossed my mind. There have been some great presidents in the history of Concordia St. Paul, not least of which is the current president, Dr. Holst. I'm not sure that I actually fit into that category, and so I'm struggling with that personally. But I'm humbled to be here this afternoon and tomorrow, and I'm praying for you in terms of this process. As I look at this whole process, I mean, selecting a president is one of the most important strategic decisions that an institution can make. A president helps to shape and articulate and sell and guide a vision of an institution. They can make or break an institution. We know that. I've served under 3 presidents at Concordia Austin, and they all have not been stellar moments in my life. And so presidential leadership is extremely important. I want to share with you at the very beginning, I'm not here to actively campaign for president of Concordia St. Paul. I'm not here to tell you I'm the best person, because that's between you and God. You've got to decide who of the 3 candidates, if any of us, are the right fit for the university. I know the other 2 guys. One of them is from my place. We work together all the time. We're 3 very different individuals. We've got different strengths and different weaknesses. I pray that God guides that process over the next 3 to 4 weeks as you come to a decision in terms of who to call as a president. My prayers are with you, and I trust the Lord will guide you to the right fit. As part of the selection process, I thought it may be wise to share with you a little bit of my own personal background, because I think you need to understand why I look at things the way that I do. If a person is going to provide some vision and leadership into a school, I think you need to know where I'm coming from in terms of what's important to me. And so I want to take some time this afternoon just to share a little bit of my own personal foundation, because I think there's some key components that come out of that. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of my professional career, and then talk a little bit about vision as it applies to Concordia St. Paul. I think the big question that one would ask is, who is this guy? I know some of you, but not a lot of you. Most of you probably would never know me. And so I want to give you a little bit of insight in who I am. And I think in the end, as a search committee and the Board of Regents try to decide whether or not I'm the right fit, hopefully this sort of fits into it. I know it's somewhat of a cliche, but it's nonetheless true. I am a small-town boy. I was born and raised in South Dakota. It is one of the most sparsest populated states in the Union and one of the poorest. I was born in Mitchell, South Dakota, and raised in a small community called Howard. Howard, this is the main street of Howard. It's about 70 miles west of Sioux Falls. It's a community that's got maybe about 1,000 folks at best. It was important to being in this small community because I learned an awful lot from it. And hopefully will help to connect a few of the dots here for you on that. I don't know whether my father ever finished high school when he was growing up. He enlisted in the Navy at the end of World War II and went to serve. He was a farm boy. But I'm not sure that he ever finished school. When he came back home, he became an electrician. He then went on to become manager or head of our county power company. He was elected a couple of times to city council in our small community. He served as mayor for a number of years. He died when I was a junior in college. He died at the age of 44, so he was relatively young. But my father, in spite of whether he ever finished school, was one of the smartest guys I ever knew. He taught me so much about how to look at life, how to make decisions, how to deal with people. Relationships were very important to him. Service was incredibly important to him. My mother was a farm girl. She was born and raised in southern South Dakota. She went to 1 year of college before she got out and taught in a rural elementary school for a couple of years. At the time, at the end of the 40s, beginning of the 50s, that was credentials enough to teach. She taught a couple of years, and then she married my father. I learned a lot of life from her as well. I mean, the caring and the compassionate side of life came largely from her, but she taught me a lot of how to look at my world. And this is the gene pool from which I come from. And when I look back at it, I can trace in the DNA some of the things that I like and some things I don't like, of how I turned out the way I am. How this little guy called David ended up to be here today. My parent, I have a brother too, I better point that out. You know, and the problem is they always liked him better. And I'm not kidding. This is my brother Doug. He is a principal, bless his soul, of a middle school in Columbus, Nebraska. And he was selected a couple of years ago as Principal of the Year in Nebraska for the state of Nebraska. And we're really quite proud of him for that. So a middle school guy. My parents were strong Lutherans. I can never remember, maybe a blizzard, that we would have ever missed church. It was just ingrained in me that that was part of my life, a faith, an active faith in Jesus Christ. I mean, that's written in my soul, and I thank them eternally for that. Relationships were incredibly important to my parents. They were actively involved in the community. Service was incredibly important to them. Interfacing with our small town. I'm so grateful that I grew up in that kind of a community where you could get to know everybody and the value of getting to know people and working with people. They love to travel, and as isolated as South Dakota can be at times, by the time I graduated from high school, I saw most of the United States. My folks love to travel. I still love to travel. I know that I get from my father the fact that I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love skydiving. I have driven the Texas Motor Speedway. I'll tell you, every mile over 180 miles an hour pumps my blood. I love it. Carol doesn't. Carol and I went hiking on one of the tallest glaciers in the world down in New Zealand. She didn't like that either. Carol's not an adrenaline junkie. But she went with me on it. That was great. Starting to take flying lessons. I want to solo badly. I'm an adrenaline junkie. Last fall, I applied for an experience at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And they were going to select one person to come in and live for a month in the glass room. I thought this would have been a great way to spend a sabbatical. I applied, didn't win. I was sort of really disappointed about this one. But I thought this would be a great thing because you lived in it 24/7. And you could interface with all of these people that come through the Museum of Science and Industry. I thought, wouldn't this be fantastic? I mean, all day long for a month, you could just get to know people and connect with individuals. I thought that was just marvelous. The only thing I got out of this was I got at least free tickets to the museum. I've got a bucket list. I'd love to go to Antarctica. I'm still trying to find somebody to go with me, but that would check off the 7th continent on the list. I would love to get there. And when I get back, Carol knows full well that I would love to vacation in Bora Bora. And then I could die. I would just be sort of happy. I'm sort of an adrenaline junkie. And a lot of it comes out of my background, my experience in life. This little kid growing up in South Dakota. I struggled as I was growing up in terms of what to do. I decided that as I was getting ready to graduate from high school, that I was going to become an engineer, a civil engineer. And so I applied at South Dakota State University in Brookings, but really got frightened about the math, that I didn't really know that I had enough math experience. My parish pastor was encouraging me to consider church work, professional church work, because he thought I would be a good pastor. And I thought, well, you know, I don't feel that I'm good enough to do that either. Until one day, a recruiter from Concordia College, St. Paul, Minnesota, came to South Dakota and stopped in. Spent a day in South Dakota with me and talked to me about a life of service, about professional church work. And it clicked. And so I enrolled in 1969 right here. Concordia St. Paul means a lot to me personally. Carl's already mentioned one of them, and that's her. I met my wife first quarter in a New Testament class. We fell in love a year later. It took a little while. Sometime I can relay the story to you. But we got married in '74 when I was just going into my second year at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. Happily married, 36 plus years. I often kid around, it feels like 50, but it feels like we've been married forever. And it all happened largely because of here. But the institution was also important to me for my professional church work side, because it was also here that I was struggling as I got into pre-SEM with foreign languages. And I had an excellent academic advisor, Dr. Milton Rudnick, who told me that I wasn't transferring out of that program, that I just needed to suck it up. And so Professor Englehart's German class, I struggled through. Dr. Middendorf's Greek class, got through it. And I'm the better person for it. And so I'm a professional church worker largely because of the encouragement here at the school. So I went on to 2 years at Concordia Senior College in Fort Wayne. Ironically, I had Dr. Holst as my Greek instructor there. And then went on to 4 years at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. And it's sort of the background of my life. When I look at my life, there were a variety of things that sort of surfaced out of it. An interest in relationships, strong relationships. A life of service. It all came out of living in a small town. The desire to be able to see the world, to interact with the world, not to be satisfied with just staying put. Now, my professional life you could divide up into two buckets. The first bucket is professional church work. It's in the parish. I was in parish ministry for about 14 years, just over 20 years now in higher education. This was my first congregation. It was quite literally out in a soybean field, about 100 miles south of Minneapolis, in a small community. Well, actually, it's not really even a community, but it was a small area known as Willow Creek. And down the road, 7 miles, was my second congregation, Trinity. What was important about getting into this congregation, and a thread that started to come through my life, was the fact that the larger congregation had a Lutheran school connected to it, an elementary school. And I didn't have the luxury when I was growing up to be connected to a Lutheran elementary school. We just didn't have them in South Dakota. But I began to see firsthand in this small congregation, 20 miles south of Mankato, how Lutheran education could transform people's lives. Lives of students, lives of families. And I became passionate about that. I mean, Lutheran education became so near and dear to me. I was one of the founding members that founded Martin Luther High School in Northrop, Minnesota. It meant a lot to me to be a part of Christian education. We moved on here to the Twin Cities. I was called as associate pastor, then took on the role as senior pastor at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Prior Lake. We were blessed there to be able to start a Lutheran school all the way from preschool through grade 8 in 1 year. It was incredible to be able to work with relationships in the congregation, to share with people how the importance of Christian education in people's lives. It was also in this congregation that the Lord started to connect some other threads in my life. One dealing with technology and the other one dealing with communication, because it started to unfold a path in life that I had not expected. When I moved to the Twin Cities, and I was pastor here at St. Paul's, got connected with the Minnesota South District, so I became editor of the Minnesota South Lutheran, which at the time was the district magazine, and got actively involved in the communications effort for the Minnesota South District. Prior Lake was just getting cable television in, and we were able to secure a cable television channel on the cable system, and we created our own sort of religious access channel in this community. And it was sort of pan-religious. I mean, we were broadcasting a lot of stuff. I mean, congregation, no one in the congregation was prepared to do television, but we learned about it. It was sort of fun. We broadcast worship services and Bible studies and a lot of things. It wasn't particularly good television, but it connected people. And it got attention of the Synod. I was appointed by the President of the Synod to 2 terms as on Synod's Board for Communication Services. One of those terms I served as chairman. I believe I was the youngest chair of the synodical board. But it was during that time that I was able to help the Synod overhaul its communication plan. And in fact, the synodical logo, and I sort of wear that proudly, the synodical logo, I helped design that we currently have right now. And so communication started to become of an interest to me and a passion in my life. And it led to going to the University of Minnesota to go into mass communication. I got another master's in mass communication because I could see how this was starting to fit into maybe a career path here. We went over to St. John's Lutheran Church in Rosemont, which is just a southern suburb of St. Paul. And that's where I sort of completed my formal parish ministry. I was called to Austin in 1990, Concordia Lutheran College, a small college at the time. We had about, I think it was just under 500 students when I came, a struggling school. But what was of interest of going into higher education was some of the things that they were interested in. Concordia had just built a new communications center. They had a communication major. Great gift that they got, sort of similar to the theater here. They applied for an educational television license, and I think much to their shock, got it. And as a result, they wanted to start to broadcast educational television courses. They had heard of me in Minnesota doing stuff on cable television and called me to the position. It was a fascinating connection. I was entering into things I really hadn't been prepared for. I would have not in 15 years earlier thought I would ever be in higher education in this small institution. Beautiful communication center. We have one of the largest sound stages in Austin. And I'm largely the one that brought it down about 4 years ago. Beautiful, beautiful setting. We started broadcasting in 1993. We broadcast classes for credit for almost a decade. It was a great experience, helping faculty to integrate technology into their lives, bringing them to a very different mode of delivery. This hadn't really crossed anybody's mind at that institution. We secured a couple of grants in terms of expanding the operation. But what this did is got the attention of the Concordia University system because it was just starting out in '93. And so I was one of the founding members for what is known as QNet, the Concordia University Education Network. And really it was a group of folks who were interested in technology, of trying to bring technology into higher education, of how to integrate technology into teaching and learning in new ways. We were able to put in video conferencing systems into all of the campus. Now, that's been a passing technology, but at the time, it was really a major step forward. We got a federal grant to be able to go out and train faculty members of how to use technology. The Department of Education was fascinated about it. I remember going to Washington and making the report to them on how this had all unfolded. It was incredible. And what was emerging to me in this part of my life was a passion for collaboration, because connecting all of the schools together, all of the Concordias, was sort of fascinating. Sharing courses between the Concordias, getting to know the Concordias. I probably have been on the Concordia all of the Concordia campuses more than most people, because I was able to train about 80% of the faculty back in the 90s in how to use technology sort of in its early days. Fascinating experience. What it led me to was a growing passion for good education, quality education. I went to Nova Southeastern University to get a doctorate degree in instructional technology as a result. I wanted to go to the University of Texas, but they essentially, if you get a doctorate there, you got to check out of life for a couple of years. They don't give you a lot of options. You can't really work. And I thought, well, you know, since I'm one that's sort of pushing technology and integrating it into the classroom, then maybe I should go through a program that actually would do that and experience it firsthand. And so that led to instructional technology and sort of a certified instructional designer. So good quality education to me is incredibly important. I've got a passion for that. Technology, I have a passion for that. There's certain things that when I look back over my past, it has developed passions in my life. My whole life changed in about 2003, because this one I didn't necessarily see coming, and that was to move a campus. Concordia Lutheran College was really in a very similar situation as this college is physically. We were bounded on the right side, on the east side, by I-35, and there was no way we were going to move east. I-35 in Austin is double-decked. They looked down on us. South of us was a medical center, a huge medical center that was going to expand. They wanted to expand. The University of Texas, 4 blocks away. We weren't going south. And west and north was a historic neighborhood. Many of the homes there, many of the houses were historic landmarks in Austin. State historic landmarks. There was no way they were coming down. Even if we could afford to buy lots, they were going to cost us about $1 million a piece. It just didn't make sense. And so the Board of Regents decided to look and explore what the options were, because we were starting to grow and really struggling. I had looked at 2 options. One was how to stay put on 23 acres. And one of the designs that we had come up with was to sink down 4 stories into the ground. Let's put our parking underground and some of the support services underground, and then let's move up from it. We may have to go high-rise here. The other question that I saw was pushing around in the mid-90s that no one was really listening to was, what could we get out of the place? Maybe we should move. And so I did a study on both sides, staying and moving. The Board of Regents opted to move. They gave me no parameters of where to go, which was fascinating. I remember the day. It was Friday the 13th, May 13th, 2005. And I remember the vote because as I was in that Board of Regents room, and the chairman of the board had asked for every Board of Regents to publicly make their vote, so you couldn't hide. And it was unanimous. But no decision of where to go, just that we needed to go. And the only flexibility, the flexibility in terms of funding was, it all depended on how much you could sell the campus for and how much financing can we secure. I quite honestly wanted to build the school down in Corpus Christi, Texas. To me, I would love to have been on the beach. I love the beach. What we did find was 400 acres about 15 miles from us. And it was a campus that was built in 1986 by Schlumberger, which is a French oil services company. They had built a research and development campus in Austin, and they had closed it down after 20 years. Just about the time, you want to connect dots of how God guides stuff. Just about the time we were starting to look for property. And one of the criteria that I had come up with about moving was what I had sort of termed the wow factor. Wouldn't it be great to go to a campus and then leave it and say, wow, I've never seen this before? And after all of the property that I looked over for a year, this was it. 400 acres. And it was a beautiful place. They had 6 existing buildings on it. So we bought it. We gutted all of the buildings. I mean, it was a fantastic experience, quite honestly. I've never been a part of anything like it in my life. We built a bunch of new buildings. We built athletic facilities. We didn't have any margin for failure here. This wasn't the kind of thing where the construction deadline could slip a couple of months. We had to move at a certain day. And so we selected the day when we needed to be on campus on the new place and work backwards. It was a fantastic experience. Relationships became really important in this project to me. Collaboration. Rather than having one architect and one engineering firm and one general contractor, I decided to split the project up into 4 pieces. I really didn't want to put all the eggs in one basket, because if we had problems with a general contractor, we couldn't move. And we had a deadline to get off the old campus. After we sold it, the owner wanted us to get off. And so we were on a tight schedule. And so I selected 4 architects, 4 general contractors, and a whole host of subs. We had a ton of people working on this. What was fascinating about it was sort of building the relationships with these people, the collaboration work that existed between these people. To this day, we still all stay in contact with each other after almost 3 years. These folks are still connected with Concordia, and it's not because they want to get business on the next building we're going to build, but because they were amazed of our culture, of who we were, and how we were managing and working with them. We had our moments. This is our president. He and I were sitting across the table the day that we signed the papers to sell the campus. 80 years people had spent money, blood, sweat, and tears to build the old place. And with a signature, we were selling it off. I remember the day that I put the signature on the demolition orders for the buildings to come down. And it was tough. But in the end, we got a whole new place. And it's changed the culture of the institution. It's been fantastic. This was one of our student housing facilities on the old campus. Quite honestly, it was somewhat painful to watch it come down, because I had helped build that thing. This was all part of in my own life, learning about change. We had to coordinate getting everything together, working together as teams. I have to tell you that not everybody was supporting us moving. We had mixed feelings. A lot of people had mixed feelings about going. Some folks didn't think that we were actually going to do it. It was almost till the day we got the moving van sitting in front of the school that some faculty members weren't packing the boxes. Concordia makes all those promises, they'll never keep it. We're building the new place, guys. And so we had to work significantly with people to build relationships, to coordinate activities. And we got this new place. It is a great location, and so proud to have been a part of it. In the end, it was all about this, our students, providing the best environment that we could provide for what we could afford to give them a quality Christian education. And so that brings me to sort of connecting some of the threads. Growing up in South Dakota, relationships were important to me and still are important to me. Collaboration, working together. Quality Lutheran education. Boy, I learned that in the congregation. There's so many threads I can go back and connect into my life in terms of why I am the way I am today and how I look at things today. And so that brings me to this place. If you're expecting me to stand up here today and share with you to pull out a detailed vision for Concordia St. Paul, you're going to be disappointed because I don't have one. I just don't have enough information. I believe that a president has an important role of developing, shaping, articulating, selling the vision of an institution, but quite honestly, it really involves a collaborative effort from all of the stakeholders. It's getting to know individuals to help design what Concordia St. Paul needs. I've gotten some pieces of that. Got some more documents a couple of weeks ago to read through. And clearly there's a lot of challenges involved here at Concordia St. Paul, but you know there's challenges in all 10 of our schools and a lot of small private education schools. Developing a vision for an institution, I think it's a corporate event. The president can go out and sell it, but it really involves the group coming together and helping to articulate what that vision would represent. I can share with you some of the things that are important in my life, which I think would be reflected in a vision. I know that folks want to hear sort of what's, the vision side of it all. And, as I learn more from some of the meetings that we've had today, and I know there'll be more tomorrow, I'm learning more. I'm learning what's important, or beginning to start learning what's important to you. I'm also a strong supporter of Jim Collins and the good to great principles that he espouses, of getting the right people on the bus and in the right seats. I don't know enough about that yet to even make a judgment on it. But there are some things in my personal life that would just be pulled into a vision because of how important I believe they are. I'm committed to superior Lutheran education. There's just no option in my life for anything other than that. We owe it to the students. The money that they pay for an education has got to be top quality. I understand you're in a market with a lot of fascinating neighbors. I mean, there's a lot of schools. We don't have a lot of schools in Austin that we have to compete with. University of Texas is the biggest school there, obviously, 55,000 kids. Everybody wants to go there. They sort of look at us as a fallback. I'd love them to look at Concordia because of just superior education. One of the first things that I would probably embark on, and I shared this with the search committee, to come here as a president, I would certainly want to be engaged in a conversation, particularly in the faculty, about academic identity. What's a Lutheran education? We're having that conversation in Austin, and it's really been helpful. Over the last couple of years, we should have done this, it sort of flipped it in Austin, and unfortunately, it just happened that we moved before we actually sort of talked about why. But we really need to start talking in Austin. We needed to start talking about Austin. What's unique about us as an institution? What's unique about a Lutheran education? I would love to engage in that. We've had some fascinating conversations over the last couple of years in Austin that are helping to unpack that for me. What's distinctive? I think it's an education that represents the highest quality that students can get. I'm a strong supporter for faculty development, for providing the resources that faculty need to do education properly. We owe it nothing less to our students. I would love to see a Concordia degree that has incredible respect in the community, where employers seek out Concordia graduates because of what that degree represents. And I think all of that would have impact on retention. Most of our Concordias have retention issues. I know there are issues here as well. And there's a whole host of reasons of why that is. But developing a superior Lutheran education that really is second to none would be a part of my own personal belief system. I would love to see an engaging community of learning, where it's not just students doing work, but a community that really loves to learn. Loves to learn, whether it's from mistakes or successes. What it's doing is modeling to its community what a learning community is all about. An active learning community. And that one's important to me, a life of service. It comes out of my own personal background. Involved in serving other people. Service within a campus, service outside of a campus, a life of service where we're making a difference to people. Building relationships, again, that's a hot button in my life. Building strong interpersonal relationships are incredibly important. I mean, and that's part of what employers are looking for. Collaboration is important to me as well. Not just on the inside of an institution, but on the outside. I think it speaks to diversity. We need to be an engaging community of learning that's impacting the world in which we live. Third, could have been first, but to have a community that's on fire for the Lord. We continue to struggle with that at Austin. We don't have any magic bullet that we've solved that one on. A changing student body, a changing faculty and staff, and we're really struggling with how do we engage people in faith. A couple of years ago, we started a process known as transformation. And it was to look at who we are and how are we going to reshape ourselves on this new campus. I'm leading the spiritual component of that discussion. And it's some fascinating discussions that we've had in terms of who we are. How distinctive do we want to be? I'd love to have that kind of a conversation, I think, within this institution. Where we're openly and actively, very visibly showing faith. I mean, Lutherans, for those that are Lutherans, and Lutherans aren't a majority of the population in Texas, but the ones that are Lutherans, they're not necessarily ones who open up the door of their heart and start sharing faith all over the place. I mean, this is sort of a kept-in secret in many respects. How do we become more open with our faith in the Lord? And it's not denominational. It's sharing Jesus Christ and who we are and what we do that really becomes important. Living out the Lutheran principles. We're trying to articulate those better in Austin of what those principles might look like. Maybe you know them better here. But I think that would be a component of any vision. Increased visibility. Boy, you guys need that. I mean, that's very clear. That we need to raise here at Concordia St. Paul increased visibility for a variety of reasons. Certainly an aggressive marketing campaign would help, but there's a lot of conversation that would have to go before that. And I think it's all premised upon what kind of solid, clear, articulatable vision could be developed. Name recognition. How do you brand the Concordia name? I have to say, and I think it's better today. I'm assuming it is. But going to school in 69, 70, 71, if you said that you were from going to Concordia College, generally anybody would say, oh, up in Moorhead? No, in St. Paul. Oh, I didn't know they had one there. And I think that's a little bit better here today. But raising that visibility, but also branding it in such a way that when people hear Concordia University St. Paul, they actually do know where it's at, what it stands for, and that it stands for top quality education, Christian Lutheran education. How do you distinguish it from all the neighbors? Like I said, we only have a couple of colleges that we've got to deal with in Austin. Here you've got people all over the neighborhood. I understand that. And it's tough, especially in changing demographics in Minnesota and in the Midwest. There's a whole host of physical plant issues that I would want to address as well. I mean, there's got to be something within the institution that becomes much more iconic. I mean, you're in a good location. I mean, it's too late to relocate, obviously. You've made some incredible investments in physical plant. We didn't. I mean, so pulling the plug on the old campus in Texas wasn't a big issue. A lot of people were happy when it came down. Here, the investment has been pretty sizable in physical plant. And you're on a freeway. How do you become more visible? More recognized as a person drives down the road? The campus, in many respects, to me, is a collection of buildings. It was when I attended here. How do you connect it all together in some aesthetic way so that people feel drawn onto the campus? That if you're in the Gangelhoff Center, it's not just that gym over there, but it's actually connected to the rest of this place. I mean, there's a lot of things that probably need to be talked about in that light. Financial security, I mean, that goes without saying. Most of our Concordias are very, very fragile. We're better off in Texas largely because we moved. We could refinance ourselves. But we're managing ourselves very differently as a result. And we're able to catch sort of the wave of increased enrollment. We received incredible visibility moving. And we played on it. We've used that free advertisement. But financial security, and that really is dependent, I think, here in terms of building endowment and enrollment. You need to build a bigger savings account. We're actively working at that. I mean, in my mind, I've got some thoughts in terms of what goals might look like here, but I need to know more information. And also donor base. I know that that's eroding. It is in most of our Concordias. And how do we reach out to a different donor base? I think a lot of the financial security goes back to selling a clear and compelling vision. I think a lot of financial security is based upon knowing who we are and selling it properly. Sustainability has become important to me. Lutherans aren't historically known for being environmentalists. I have changed my tune moving on to the new campus. I've shared with some of you that I believe I probably have one of the best offices in the Synod because my office has got glass on 3 sides and it overlooks a 250-acre nature preserve and a small lake. I love going there in the morning and watching the sun go up. It's great. But that nature preserve is starting to change who we are in Austin. Sustainability, environmentalism now has become part of our campus. And it's becoming more so. And I would like to believe that at here, we would be talking about maybe how do you become a voice in a community for responsible urban environmentalism. In Austin, we've got radicals on both sides of the environmental argument. And I would love to see our school in Austin continue to carve out the middle ground that is able to help people to see this in a more sensible light. And how are we good stewards for the Lord? Because really it's all about Christian stewardship. And then building institutional pride. To be proud of Concordia. Talking with some folks, I don't necessarily get that picture that there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of things that have happened. And I suspect if you're like most Concordias, you're probably tired out because everybody does 5,000 jobs. And it gets exhausting. But there's an incredible amount of things that get accomplished. And so how do you build institutional pride? Celebrating the successes. I know that there's a lot of positive things. As I read through the material, I know there's financial challenges, and I'm aware of a lot of the challenges in the university. But there's a lot of things to celebrate in terms of very positive things that have taken place. And so building in sort of a culture of celebrating as a family the successes, so that in the end, people are proud of Concordia St. Paul. Students are proud, faculty are proud, staff's proud of this great institution. Those are some of the pieces that are a part of my thinking in terms of vision. Again, there's a lot of investment that has happened here on this acreage, and a lot of great things about the university. But in the end, it's all about the students in terms of providing them with high-quality Christian Lutheran education. And I would like to believe that whoever the Lord leads as the next president here, those things would be incorporated into it. I saw this last night. We were walking down to eat in St. Paul. And I love the marquee because I think it's sort of reflective a little bit about how Concordia St. Paul sees itself. That it's really a community of faith pulling in the world into it. And could it be done in a more dynamic, dramatic way? I think it probably could be. And so that's some thoughts that I have about, to share with you of who I am, my background, and some of the thoughts I've had about Concordia St. Paul. It means a lot to me personally. And as I said before, my prayers are with you in the selection process. I don't think it will particularly be easy. But over the next 3 weeks, you'll see 3 different people, different strengths, different weaknesses. In the end, God will guide you in terms of what to select or who to select. We're praying for you.
We have a lot of scheduled things, and we have a 5 o'clock meal with the Board of Regents and all of that. But I think if you have a few questions, David, if you could take them. We have microphones, but I think we can talk loud enough.
I'd also say to everybody here, feel free to email me questions as well. I mean, the easiest way is just david@concordia.edu. That gets to me.
Any questions?
How is it described in the administrative style? Sounds like the style and the mentions that how you work, how would you describe how you relate that with
I've gone through a micromanaging president sort of in the mid of my life, and that wasn't really a good approach for me. I have a tendency of wanting to lay out some very clear vision for folks and empowering them to do their job. I think there has to be accountability in it. I'm not scared to fire people. But in the end, the success is because of taking it from A to B, those individuals sort of fulfilling a clear vision that I've given to them. I operate my department that way, where I empower my folks to do their job. I stay connected, but I'm not there to have to tell them what to do. And to encourage within my own department sort of the growing, the learning that takes place in all of that. But it's, I would like to believe it's an engaged leadership, but one that's also empowers people to lift up the best in people to succeed at what they're sort of tasked to do. I view a lot of times a president as being a cheerleader, of helping to set what the goals are, but to cheerlead people on, help them along, so that they become successful. Well, I've worked with advancement and development actively for all the years I've been at Austin. The president quite often will send me out to represent him at meetings and gatherings. We generally reserve the big asks for the president, but in terms of finances, probably the largest gift we brought into that was just over $2 million. I'm actively involved with advancement and development in doing presentations, going out to folks, and actually helping advancement and development design a lot of their presentation materials. Relocation, I mean, all of that, I was the head of that, pretty much selling, buying, or that was all. It was a team of folks, but I was managing that thing. In terms of size, we're just about 2,700 students, so similar size to Concordia St. Paul. About 40, I think we're almost to 50% of our population, student population, is non-Caucasian. So we are a fairly diverse campus. We have a high level of Hispanic learners on our campus. One of the things that we attempted about 10 years ago was to try to change the campus into being bilingual in preparation for what's happening in Central Texas. We weren't particularly successful. I think we're going to try to see if we can do that again, of actually teaching all of our employees how to speak Spanish. We are not, a majority of our campus is not majority Lutheran. We have a wide range of faith base. The largest denominational group on our campus are Catholic, and followed by Baptist. So as far as a campus in terms of diversity, I'm not sure Austin actually views itself as being a very diverse campus, but we are. And through the last couple of months, we've been talking a little bit more because I've been raising that, largely because of sort of the conversations and the material here, because I know diversity is very important for St. Paul and that conversation. And I was thinking, well, gee, we don't really even talk about it at Austin, and look at our statistics. And we're growing naturally that way, but what would happen if we actually strategically looked at it and embraced it a little bit more? So that's sort of what our spread. And we've got a very similar spread, I think, statistics-wise, in terms of undergraduates, the amount of undergraduates and the non-traditional. We are primarily a commuter-based campus, so we've got about 300 students that are living on campus. We couldn't build enough student housing on the new campus. So what we're going to do is actually buy an apartment complex to accommodate that. But I think our spread is probably similar to St. Paul in terms of what I see. Do I envision one that could happen or will happen? Somebody's got to become an active leader in the synod to do that. It's not going to happen because the 10 schools are all sitting there wanting to love themselves. I mean, that's one of the big challenges, is that we don't have a lot of folks within, I believe, the CUS that wants to actively champion collaboration. I think it was one of the great dreams in '93 when the university system was formed, that this was going to be an incredible collaboration effort. There's been pockets of collaboration that have been successful. Quite honestly, I have a strong support of collaboration. We collaborate with Concordia Portland. We found a cousin in the system, and it's Portland. And so our IT department collaborates with them a lot. There's pockets of collaboration that I think exist here, but I'm not sure that there really is any champion out there who actually would champion it. I think there has to be a president or two who's going to actively engage it, maybe a school that would act. Somebody's got to rise up and probably champion collaboration far more than what it is, or else it's going by the wayside. Most of the schools sort of feel independent, and who needs anybody else? We need each other. And as I've shared with the search committee as well, because it's sort of coupled with that, is that I think that the universities have a responsibility back to the synod to play more of a leadership role in its church body than what we historically have. And I'd unpack that for people if anybody wants to talk about it sometime. I mean, apart from what is stated in the handbook, the bylaws of the synod, I think that Concordia's, part of this goes down to understanding academic identity. That if a campus has a very good understanding of its core values, its mission, its principles, that it understands its faith, why not engage the world in quite honestly, any conversation? Because we have something to bring to any conversation. I don't have a lot, I mean, I support very much academic freedom in a broad sense. I mean, there's things that veer out, I think, to be inappropriate. And I think a president would want, that's why being engaged as a president, I think one would want to help shape, where are those limits? And I don't really know at this point in time, because we haven't necessarily crossed those in Austin. I probably would encourage a far more active, engaging community, but one that's also got to be actively growing in its faith, its strengthening of its faith. Because I think that helps balance out when you run into the world that is sinful. You've got a message that actually will win the day. And you don't have to worry or be afraid to talk about it, because my faith in my Lord is strong enough to deal with it. Hope that answered it. Great question. I'm struggling with that. One of the things that came out reading all of the comments that the search committee had provided for the listening groups and stuff, there's a couple of dynamics that are actually bubbling in my head. One is a 20-year presidency. I mean, it would be like a pastor coming into a congregation where the previous pastor had been there 30 years, 35 years. Do I have to do it the same way that he did it? I came into a long-term pastorate in Prior Lake, and the transition was sort of interesting. I think here you've got a 20-year presidency, which there's a lot of things that Bob has done for the institution, really has helped define it. What goes on? What's some of the legacy that needs to continue? Would an inbound president have to continue everything that Bob does? What has to be preserved? That's part of what I'm engaging people on in the conversations. Because I think there are some things that go on. But an inbound president, I think, would want to also put onto an institution sort of, their thoughts, their ideas as well, and maybe to build off of the successes in a new way. I don't see a new president coming in, well, certainly I wouldn't come in and you sort of level it. In spite of relocation and knocking down the old campus and building a brand new one. I don't envision that here. There's a lot of great foundation at Concordia St. Paul. It would seem to me that a next president builds on top of that to continue to lift it up. How supportive will the institution be to maybe a different style of architecture? That's because this is a two-way street. You can look at me and try to decipher, do I want to work with this guy? It's also reversed. Do I want to work with all of you guys? Because it really is a collaboration. Together, we will accomplish great things. And so a lot of that is still bubbling through my mind, and I'm sure that's not an answer to the question, but to me, I really believe it's building on top of incredible successes already. But it may be a different style of architecture. Yeah, and those are certainly not set in stone. There's a lot more. You mean after I get back from Antarctica? And Bora Bora? Yeah, you got to get Bora Bora in there. No, actually, Bora Bora, I'd go there after needing some rest after the first year, probably. As I shared with the search committee, I guess as I've thought about it, one of the things that I think would be very important at the very beginning and probably get a lot of attention is getting out and meeting the constituency. I think getting to know the students, getting to know the faculty and the staff, building those relationships. To me, that's just foundational. I would see spending a lot of time listening, at least in the initial months, and spending a lot of time on the campus listening, but also off the campus and getting to know the region. I think you'd expect that of a new president. I don't see him coming in, or at least I wouldn't be coming in and saying, oh, by the way, here is the vision, and this is the way we're going to go. Because I think, again, it's building those relationships with people. And the stronger the relationships are, the vision is going to be stronger. The ownership will be deeper. But I would see a lot of time connecting with people. There are some issues, I think, that probably would need to be addressed. One of the things on the list, in my mind, would be dealing with retention. I think that needs some attention. Graduation rates, I think, need to be discussed. I think one has to look very quickly at development advancement in terms of how to create a game plan for tackling that and improving that in the coming years. I think you've got a window of opportunity in 2013 to 2018, the 120th to the 125th anniversary period. Might be wise to take advantage of that. You're going to get some leverage of hiring a new president. How much visibility will you get out of a new president initially to introduce that person across the region? So I think there's a variety of things, but a lot of it, I think, would be building relationships. And to me, I guess even in a time, if somebody would ask me, in terms of when would a vision pop out, or a strategic plan be revised? A year and a half. It may be a beyond 2013 kind of vision. I just don't know at this point. I remember as we were interviewing candidates at Austin, because I went through 2 processes where we selected 2 presidents. And it was a very frustrating time in Austin. We called three folks, both presidential searches, that declined the call. It was number 4 that took it, so it was really, really depressing. But you almost expect then that there's going to be, the new guy's going to be here, and then tomorrow we're going to be down this new road someplace. It takes a little bit of time to acclimate. It takes a little bit of time to get to know the institution better, for that institution to connect with a new person, and especially after a 20-year presidency.